Introduction. The search for meaning in suffering can result in a stronger mind. Shock is one of the first signs of captivity. Upon being imprisoned, many inmates experience the terrifying sensation of a harsh new world. The newcomers had to deal with being ripped from normalcy and thrust into a hellish existence, as was typical of prisoners at concentration camps. The first few weeks of being a prisoner are perplexing since shock gave way to apathy and a complete disregard for feeling while you were still trying to make sense of your past and present reality. Apathy was necessary to keep the prisoner from caring about anyone other than themselves because their first priority was to safeguard their inner selves. The author contends that we can feel stronger on the inside as our exterior hardens and ages. The Nazi concentration camps' inmates physically deteriorated, but their minds and spirits improved, and their connection to forces outside of the physical world deepened. In this situation, the prisoners learned to cope with their misfortunes by creating vivid visions of the future in which they imagined their misery coming to an end. It was unnecessary to have petty wishes for anything that wouldn't guarantee the prisoner's existence. As a result, the inmates' libido drastically decreased. The only things they cared about were politics and religion. Our spirit becomes stronger as we look for meaning through difficult times, and people with a strong spirit may bear even the harshest physical torment, if religion is as first and foremost as it would seem. Love, according to Viktor Frankl, is a crucial element in the will to survive. It helps to simply have someone to live for to help you survive a difficult scenario. Even while suffering can be fatal, love is more powerful than death. Love preserves the mind in the face of suffering and death. It can be kept together by the thought of a loved one. Having recollections of the simpler times was also beneficial. In order to feel relief, an inmate's memory replays pleasant memories and keeps him in a state of joyful reminiscing. Also, it can make the prisoner more sensitive to the beauties of nature and art, or even develop their sense of humor. Man's search for meaning describes the author Viktor Frankl's experiences during World War II as a prisoner in Nazi detention camps. Frankl gained a lot of survival knowledge from the experiences he and the other prisoners had. You might never find yourself in a concentration camp, he pointed out, but suffering is an inevitable part of life. Frankl made notes of the characteristics and factors that helped some prisoners endure the difficult circumstances that other inmates couldn't. And after leaving the camp, he passed along these ideas to others. It's now up to you to learn them. You'll learn what to do in an emotional crisis and how to find purpose even in suffering from reading this summary. People can put up with nearly anyhow if they have a reason to survive. Chapter 1. No amount of pain is too great for us to bear. At Nazi concentration camps, where individuals had to suffer conditions that can only be characterized as hell on earth, the idea that man can survive anything was put to the test and proved true. Although everybody going through the same tragedy, some manage to live to tell the tale. If one puts their mind to it, they can survive in a concentration camp. But as you adjust to this grim reality, you begin to realize that there is mental clarity and that even the smallest pleasures can be meaningful. These ostensibly uncomplicated actions make it simpler for the mind to comprehend relief. For the prisoners of the Nazi extermination camps in Poland, just knowing that you might get 2 slices of bread instead of 1 made a huge difference. The secret to surviving misery is to find a little joy. It keeps us appreciative. People can either adapt to their circumstances or remain firm. Most prisoners initially used abhorrent means of surviving and ascribed it to their environment. But one's freedom to decide who they are and want to be in the midst of difficulty cannot be taken away from them. Those who are incarcerated look for significance in their circumstances. They must regard it as a chance to discover happiness and a meaning in life. Because suffering is a necessary part of life. They shouldn't forget their humanity in their struggle to live. Our actual nature must not be compromised in order for us to live. Viktor Frankl found the uncertainty of his confinement to be the most painful aspect of his imprisonment. Because they were unable to envision a life outside of their current situation behind barbed wire walls, many prisoners in concentration camps would typically give up and just wither away due to this unknown. Once you comprehend and make meaning of suffering, it no longer has the same impact. Once you do, you reinforce your spiritual and mental truths and create room for future faith. We are forced to modify ourselves when we can no longer affect a situation. Chapter 2. We continually look for meaning and yearn for a life that is different from the one we were given at birth. Since meaning is a major motivator and a type of natural yearning for something greater than reality that governs everything, humans cannot exist without it. It is claimed that meaning is a fictitious idea created as a protection mechanism. The notion that one can live or die for their ideals and convictions transcends logic, nevertheless. Trying to exercise one's right to define one's meaning might be frustrating. When a person struggles to identify their life's purpose and find meaning in their existence, this conflict, known as existential frustration, arises. As we look for meaning in our life, it can occasionally cause inner strain and cause more harm than good. Yet, a person must experience this conflict in order to exist, which causes noogenic neuroses. The word nous comes from the Greek and describes the enormous distress that the mind experiences when it searches unsuccessfully for the purpose of life. Everyone can accept the tension that keeps them looking for new meanings, which is known as no dynamics. It's beneficial to feel unsatisfied and want to enhance what we have accomplished because that's how our quest for significance is expressed. Only if we live without stress would we accept a substandard life. Existential frustration exerts pressure that drives transformation. But many people experience the existential vacuum, a state of ongoing meaninglessness. The emptiness of a pointless life causes a deep sense of boredom that leads to aggressiveness, depression, and addiction, which frequently ends in suicide. This sensation of isolation is a trait of the modern generation. In these times of mental suffering, logotherapy, a psychoanalytic method that involves looking for a meaning or logos, can be helpful. It can fill the void with a clear objective and stop a return into bad behaviors. Did you know that the Nuremberg laws went into effect on September 15, 1935, excluding Jews from participation in public life? Also, German Jews were denied citizenship and the option of matrimony under these rules. Chapter 3. The meaning of life varies. Life means different things to different individuals for every one of us. Life has a relative, ever-evolving meaning rather than a fixed or abstract one. So, we can only pinpoint a person's or a time's purpose for living. Don't ask what life is, then. But what exactly is life for me? Patients who receive logotherapy become conscious of their part in defining their own existence. The goal of a logotherapist is to improve the patient's clarity of vision. A patient can discover meaning by engaging in one of three activities that both relieve their pain and give them a sense of accomplishment. Experiencing meaningful events. Interacting with a person they enjoy being around. Forming an optimistic outlook on inevitable hardship. A patient can discover meaning by participating in or experiencing culture and nature, or by relating to and loving someone. The only way to get to the heart of someone else and discover who they truly are is through love. It enables us to recognize a person's qualities and potential and assist them in realizing those qualities. According to logotherapy, love is not just sex but also the basic instinct that gives rise to the desire for sex. Sex is just one way to communicate love, there are many others. Full disclosure is encouraged by love. Love yourself first if you want to find meaning in your life. Suffering is the third approach to discover meaning. Pain has meaning since it is a natural part of life. Although this mood can be used to look for meaning, meaning need not be found through pain. Then, is there a greater purpose? Yes. Regardless of a person's religious beliefs, logotherapy aims to pinpoint this one ultimate meaning. Instead of attempting to change the patient's belief system, consider offering them a meaning inside it that eventually explains their lives. Chapter 4. Psychotherapy uses the logotherapy technique to address common problems. We've briefly discussed logotherapy as an alternative to psychotherapy, but in this section we'll delve a little deeper into the specifics of the approach and its goals. In order to assist people in overcoming common challenges, logotherapy has devised a unique method. As in terror, it finds a common beginning point in neurotic patients called future fear, which causes the person to worry future events. This is known as hyperintention, and a related disorder known as hyperattention can also result in illness. When a patient focuses too much attention to a condition, it worsens the symptoms associated with it. The fear of something happening can really make it do so. Such a situation is remedied by the paradoxical intention approach. It seeks to eliminate anticipated worries by getting the patient to think about things that might have the desired results. For instance, you might assume that I should perspire even more if you are uncomfortable with sweating in public. This time, the rationale is that you change your perspective and see the issue as a challenge instead of a problem. Reverse psychology might make your body reject the mental triggers that cause worry. In order to battle neurosis, logotherapy first considers how old the patients who experience it are. For most, a neurosis is a type of nihilism. The idea that man is nothing more than the product of biological, psychological, and sociological circumstances is a creation of environment and heredity. There is no difference between this emptiness and the preceding existential void. According to logotherapy, man is unquestionably a finite creature who controls what his surroundings will make of him rather than merely being a product of it. Chapter 5. We can make sense of the senseless sufferings with the aid of optimism. In whatever circumstance, man may always decide what his nature is, since there is no circumstance that can rob him entirely of his freedom. So, even in a neurotic state, the patient retains some degree of autonomy over whether to seek treatment or continue to be in this state. Our ideas have a significant impact on how our bodies respond. Even in the face of overwhelming obstacles, we all have the ability to select our reactions. Love or a deeper appreciation of the life one had before the suffering might serve as a person's haven. According to the author, pan-determinism is a quality that allows one to rise above any given circumstance without submitting to it. Tragic optimism is a philosophy of life that sees some value in seemingly hopeless circumstances. Tragic optimism in logotherapy aims to use pain as a human accomplishment, use shame to better oneself, and get motivation from the transient aspect of life. Since we require a reason to experience emotions, this state cannot be artificially induced. Tragic optimism is the pursuit of meaning under difficult circumstances. It can result in a favorable outcome and give people a stronger sense of purpose. If one can remind oneself to look for the bigger meaning in one's suffering, not give up or turn to instant gratification, such as drugs, sex, or even criminality, one can learn to be tragically hopeful. The patient's surviving peace must be found and revitalized by the logotherapist in order to fill the void that is devouring the patient's soul. Conclusion. We encounter unpleasant situations every day in our life. Or we lead a life of suffering for some, like the inmates of Auschwitz. It is entirely up to us how we choose to respond to these situations. No matter how bad the circumstances, you are who you are and always will be. You must therefore discover the meaning of this life for yourself and come to terms with it. Imagine a life without suffering for yourself right now. You will burn out quickly if your life has no meaning or no desire for the future. The worst possible treatment was given to prisoners in concentration camps. Some were able to survive while maintaining their moral character and their minds. Because they sought meaning and answers to the questions life presented them with rather than allowing their circumstances to define who they were. Without meaning, we cannot exist and will spend the rest of our lives looking for it. We must be careful not to become mired in the distress cycle brought on by the existential crisis we are experiencing. Realizing that life has no one specific meaning is the key. Therefore, you must give this meaning to yourself. You are the ship's captain. Do not consider pain to be an unnecessary aspect of life because it aids in our development. But unpleasant experiences put our personalities to the test. Remember that we always have the freedom to decide how to act because we must decide whether to remain kind or take unkind actions to exact revenge. We are forced to modify ourselves when we can no longer affect a situation. We will all experience our fair share of tragedies because they are a natural part of life. However, we can develop constructive responses, such as practicing tragic optimism. Tragic optimism is the pursuit of meaning and hope in the face of difficult and painful life circumstances. Holding on to your closest and most meaningful relationships is another related strategy for overcoming pain.